Hi, everybody. It's Steve Simpson. This is Thursday, August 13th of 2015, and this is Midwest Critical Care Collaborative Meeting. So I'm happy to see as many of you on as can be on a August week. August is traditionally one of our light months just because a lot of people are gone on vacation, and so that's the way it has worked out. Um, if you got the email this afternoon, you know that I had not yet picked out something to talk about. Um, and then I remembered as I was sitting here, oh yes, there is something that we haven't talked about yet because it just got published late in June. And so it probably is worth talking about this because some of you guys participated in the data collection for this study. You may remember all the way back to November of 2013, or actually during the summer months and fall months of 2013, I was recruiting folks to participate in the IMPRESS study, which is the International Multi-Center Prevalence Study on Sepsis. After a long time of collecting data, getting the data cleaned up, making sure it showed what it showed, etc., and then submission for publication. It is at long last published in the journal Intensive Care Medicine. And it's kind of an interesting study, so I thought that we could go through what the results seem to show based on the actual paper that's now been published. Um, and Hailey, nice to see you there. So for those of you who did participate, you will remember that we picked a specific day, the 7th of November 2013, and ran for 24 hours from midnight on the 7th to midnight on the 8th. And we looked for consecutive patients presenting either to the emergency department or cared for in an ICU with severe sepsis or septic shock. And the patients had to meet standard severe sepsis criteria, suspected infection with SIRS and organ dysfunction and or shock. I don't know whether you all ever knew, but the participating societies were the ESICM and the Society of Critical Care Medicine were the people who organized this. And of course, the Society of Critical Care Medicine functionally owns the Surviving Sepsis campaign now and clearly provides a substantial bit of the funding. So, as you know, I sent out, well, maybe you don't know, I sent out multiple waves of recruiting letters to get people to participate in the IMPRESS study, and I announced it here on our collaborative conferences, and like I say, some of you guys participated in this, so this is kind of neat. You get to see results from your paper in the journals. Fruits of your labor in the journals, I should say. Let me see. Anything else I need to say about data collection? Yeah, we looked at all the demographics, as you might imagine, and you do remember, I'm sure, what was the source of infection. And we looked at the 3-hour bundles to determine whether patients received the 3-hour bundle or not, including, of course, lactate measurement, blood cultures, administration of broad spectrum antibiotics, and intravenous administration of crystalloid if they were hypotensive or the lactate was at least 4. Looked at the 6-hour bundle elements. And then mostly it's descriptive statistics. Some comparisons are made using Fisher's exact test. But mostly it was descriptive data. So in that day, there were 618 hospitals around the world from 62 different countries, which actually is not terribly bad. In one 24-hour period, then, in those 618 hospitals, we had data on 1,927 patients, but 133 had to be taken out because they were duplicates. So in 24 hours, 1,794 was the prevalence of severe sepsis in those 62 countries. Just kind of interesting to see. Then this paragraph goes into how many different patients were from how many different countries. And maybe probably it would be best to cut from here, which is a lot of a lot of wording, and just go to a table. Pardon me. Let's turn this clockwise 90 degrees. So you can see Western Europe recruited the most patients, although in North America, Canada, US, and Mexico were second highest, followed by Asia, then Central and South America, etc. This table, let me see if I can blow it up here. And blow it up some. I don't know how well you guys can see that. Are the numbers big enough so you can see reasonably well?
They're pretty good.
So I have I have a 27-inch or 24-inch or something screen like that on my computer, so things look pretty good to me, but I also know that GoToMeeting shrinks it down some for you guys. So most of the people, and you may want to look at North America first because that's us, obviously, that 60% of the people, 64% of the people came through the emergency department. 14% were identified on a hospital ward, and 20%, I'm sorry, were identified in the intensive care unit. Respiratory, as it always is, was the largest single source of infection, and for us in North America, it was 37%. Urinary tract, as it tends to be, also was the second highest source at 20.8, but abdominal, fair amount of surgical patients included, at least from North America, and actually the numbers are not really lots different across all the various regions in terms of what was the location of infection. Most of the infections were community acquired around the world, around 65% in most cases. Septic shock was present in about 36% in the US, some variability around the world. Here you can see Patchy 2 scores were modestly high. SOFA scores were modestly sick. Hospital length of stay. So even though we identified people over that 24-hour period, we followed them for the duration of their hospitalization and followed up on them if they were out of the hospital at 28 days to find out what had happened to everybody. So hospital mortality overall for both severe sepsis and septic shock was 24%. For septic shock was 25.2% in the US. Mortality is substantially higher in different areas of the world. And I think there is another table in a little bit that shows it in terms of relative risk using the US as the baseline. So we will look at that momentarily. So this is the mortalities played out in a graph. So Oceania was the lowest mortality, but the biggest spread in terms of variability, and there were only 14 patients in Oceania. The rest of us had substantially more patients with, like I said, North America and Western Europe, the bulk. So our mortality at 24%, Western Europe slightly higher, and this is just how it plays out across the globe. This is overall bundle compliance, which it really isn't very good at all. Honestly, around the world, given that we have had this international surviving sepsis campaign for a good long time, one would have hoped for better, but even lactate measurement, only 55%. Broad spectrum antibiotics, folks did pretty well, kind of pretty well with, not really. However, this is in study after study. It looks like administration of broad spectrum antibiotics is around 65% unless you have an active sepsis team going in your hospital. In crystalloids, of course, given 56% of the time. 6-hour bundle compliance, repeat lactate, vasopressors, the full bundle for all comers was only 35.5%. So that's not particularly good for 6-hour bundle. The full bundle for the 3-hour bundle was only performed, by the way, 19% of the time. So basically what we showed here is around the globe, we don't do a good job of complying with surviving sepsis guidelines. Let me turn this back around again, clockwise. However, you can see we do probably the best job in the U.S., interestingly enough, of anywhere in the world. Now, so that's somewhat interesting, and it's just hard to tell. I'm tempted to say it's because we recruited in the U.S. a bunch of people who are interested in sepsis and who are interested in actively doing the bundles and doing the best possible care for sepsis. But I would say that probably has to apply to the folks in Europe as well. But nevertheless, on almost all the bundle elements, the U.S. is the highest across the board. Full bundle compliance at 29% as compared to substantially lower numbers for everybody else.
How do you get that?
Say again?
Nothing. Never mind.
Oh. Oh, it wasn't directed at us, I take it.
In our, I'm Glennis at North Kansas City Hospital, and
Yeah, hi, Glennis.
it is so hard for us to get a CVP reading on. I'm just surprised that it's 62% in
In
North
the
America
US.
that they actually monitor it.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
That's why I said, how did you get that?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
how did you get that? Good question.
I forgot the speaker was on.
That's funny. That's good. Yeah.
This is Lee.
Yeah, hi, Lee.
Was there a non-invasive cardiac output monitor option in this study?
In this study, no.
Okay.
In this study, no. It was quite simply, it was a descriptive study to say who's in your unit and what have they had done.
Yep.
So, interesting. Now, that's not to say, by the way, Glenna said, it is not to say that that central venous pressure was clearly being used to guide volume administration. I don't know that. All we know is that these people did have central venous pressure monitored. Actually,
Just impressed that it's there.
yeah. Let's see. Yeah, good. That gets it blown up just a little bit bigger for everybody. Measurement of central venous oxygen saturation, also pretty high here. Full bundle, all I can say is it must have been that most of the data collection was in hospitals that were actively interested in sepsis and probably actively interested in being compliant with the campaign bundles. Oceania, I really wish we had had more from Oceania. I figured that that is probably Australia and New Zealand would have come in that category, and we just didn't get a lot of people from over there. Australia and New Zealand, as you may know, are the ANZICS, or Australia New Zealand Intensive Care Society, are some of the big proponents of not using CVP, so it would have been interesting to see what they showed. But then here are some of the important things down here on the bottom, well worth looking at. So basically, were able to break it out into what is your mortality if you were in the group with bundle compliance versus what was your mortality if you were in the group without bundle compliance. And it is kind of interesting. So in the U.S., with bundle compliance, mortality was 17.8%, and without bundle compliance, 27.2%. Not necessarily so dramatic everywhere, but here in Africa, you can see with bundle compliance, 17 versus 41.7, 26 versus 40. A little bit different in Eastern Europe, similar in Western Europe, and similar in Asia. So it is interesting to see that just on a descriptive basis, if you're following the bundles, that your mortality stays lower than if you don't follow the bundles, at least on a national basis. That's, turn it back around here. So most everything, again, here is mortality or odds ratio for mortality. North America was the lowest, so we were the reference point. And you can see, except for Oceania, Western Europe, adjusted odds, Africa, Middle East, etc. So the reason this is important in my mind, or it has become relatively more important in my mind because of the meta-analysis that I showed you, I think a couple of months ago, that Bob Badgett and I and others are working on, that looks at early goal-directed therapy in sepsis. And as you know, there have been 3 recent trials suggesting that early goal-directed therapy is not effective. In our meta-analysis, we did a meta-regression, and what we found in the meta-regression was that the higher the mortality, the more likely it is that early goal-directed therapy actually saves lives. So if you're comparing your early goal-directed therapy or your sepsis bundle therapy in groups where the control mortality is 20%, as it has been in ARISE and PROMISE and process trials. So if you do that with a relatively low mortality, we can't show a benefit to early goal-directed therapy. But if your mortality in the control group is higher, early goal-directed therapy does seem to be a benefit. And it looked in our meta-regression as if that cutoff was about mortality rate of 30. And so I was trying to find, just before we got online here, what is our cumulative mortality, and none of these really wants to show it, but the cumulative mortality around the world actually exceeds 30% in lots of different areas of the world, as you can see here. Certainly is higher than the 20% that was seen in Arise, Promise, and Process. So that has become a portion of our discussion in our paper now, that the meta-regression suggests that EGDT would be useful in countries with a higher mortality, and actually most of the countries in the world do have a higher mortality than we do in the U.S. So that's going to be of use to us. Anyone who wants a copy of this, I'm always reticent to just blanket email it to the 200 and some odd people that are on our emailing list. But if anyone wants it and you want to send it to me, a request for the reprint, I'll be glad to send you the PDF of this paper from the IMPRESS trial. And especially I want to send it to you if you were one of the sites that collected data and turned it in. So that was one thing to talk about. Any comments or questions about this? Not necessarily. Kind of what you expect, except for that Glennis is incredulous that we could get 62% CVP measurement. I believe you. I believe it. Because it is kind of tough. Getting those central lines in place is a challenge for many, many places. Not just you guys, Glennis. Then I thought I would show you another couple of things that might be of use to you from Jill Chadwick. So some of you may know that we are embarked on yet another statewide educational plan based here out of KU. And what we are actually doing on our plan is to train not just hospitals, but nursing homes and emergency medical service providers to recognize sepsis and take appropriate steps. And that's not difficult. We think the appropriate steps in a nursing home are simply call EMS and get the patient transferred to the hospital. Although some high-performing nursing homes may be able to actually start an IV and get fluids going and or antibiotics. EMS units, as you are probably, as I think I have talked about in previous times, have been instituting antibiotics and certainly fluids here in Kansas. They have begun to do that. And so we are continuing to educate. Only now our push is nursing homes, EMS units, and hospitals, all to be on the lookout for severe sepsis and treat it. And so to that end, Root Powell, one of the hospitalists here at KU, and I recorded some sepsis educational videos that we just had a good time recording. And I think I will resend an email with these links. I have no idea whether anyone would find them useful or not, but these are a series of 4 educational videos that are basically conversational in nature with an occasional slide popped in to illustrate the point. They're all 5 to 7 minutes long, and we did that because we found out that is the sweet spot for the size of a video that people will actually watch on YouTube. Is somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes, and we intend to use these to spread the gospel of sepsis recognition and care. And I thought you guys might be interested in these URLs. And like I say, I think after we get off, I will just send another MailChimp blast email to everyone to give you the links to these videos. And again, if you're interested in the Impress study, please give me a call. One other thing that I wanted to talk about, just in case people have not seen this, I know I have begun posting our videos in a different place from where I used to, and I want everyone to be able to see it. So the first thing I have to do is, yes, looks like I'm logged in as me personally and not as Midwest Critical Care Collaborative. What I want to do is just show you, if you wanted to find our videos, the thing to do is to go to YouTube, like so, and then type in Kansas Sepsis Project, and you're looking for this one here, which comes up like so. So you should see a web page that looks like this, and it's got our several of the monthly meeting videos on it, and it's got a sepsis lecture that I gave to small hospitals here in Kansas, and it's got one of the talks that we've done about ANZICs and process and quality improvement, some that we did I think last year already. When was that? Yeah, already back in April of 2014. So this is where we are storing our monthly meeting videos these days. And I have a couple more to get posted. The problem is we seem to alternate back and forth between me using this desktop computer where I am tonight and me using my notebook computer when I'm on the road. And so I have to go through both of them and get all the videos posted. Last month's video is posted. The June video should be able to go up. Yeah, I think I accidentally posted it in a different place, so I'm going to have to find it and move it to over here. But this is where we keep our videos. That's kind of all the stuff I have to talk about this week. But so you guys are on. What's going with sepsis where you live?
Steve, in Twin Cities, we decided to go with the Medicare definitions of or thresholds for severe sepsis septic shock. And I think we touched on that at a prior meeting.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you guys came to any conclusion.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we're doing. I think, well, for one thing, you are bound to the Medicare definitions for sepsis and septic shock. So I guess it's the wise choice, and I think for that purpose, obviously, we're just bound to it. We were just going through this morning because we have a new software tool that allows us not in real time. This tool isn't for. This is a tool to go through charts retrospectively to identify time of onset of sepsis and help us identify whether we gave things at the right times and so forth. And for that one, I think that we are being a little more stringent about our criteria than we are for the Medicare purposes. But yeah, it makes perfectly good sense. And Medicare is interesting. For example, to meet your SIRS criteria, they say if you have met 2 SIRS criteria within 6 hours, which seems, I don't know whether to say liberal or conservative, but it seems like it's likely to pick up more people, but people who the meaning of which it's going to be a little difficult to discern. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I always looked at that in terms of the fever, and if somebody came in from home and they documented a temperature at home that was 101 or greater,
Mm-hmm.
then I would use that
Yeah,
for the
gotcha.
SIRS.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if they just said I felt feverish, I wouldn't.
Right, exactly, exactly. Well, and what we're thinking is if you've got, I mean, to me, I'm not sure what it means if I've got maybe a mild fever and then 6 hours later my fever's gone, but I have, say, a pulse rate of 95. You know,
Hmm.
is that really SIRS if if they're separated by that much? I don't know. I don't know. I think we're going to settle in on that you need to have your SIRS criteria within 2 hours of one another. Seems where we're headed right now. And the other thing, though, that we are doing, and I think we talked about this paper either last month or the month before, is making sure that people understand that even if you don't have SIRS, it doesn't mean you don't have severe sepsis, and you need to keep your eyes open for the organ dysfunction.
Yeah, we're taking the position that if you have organ dysfunction and suspicion of infection, that trumps SIRS.
I agree. Yeah, I think everybody agrees with that. And I really am not supposed to talk terribly much about it because I um, reviewed these for journal publication, but the sepsis, what would you call it? The International Sepsis Consensus Conference that was held in 2014 is about to, or they're going to propose completely revolutionizing what we call sepsis. And this much I can say because they've said this in public is they want to remove the term severe sepsis and they just want to use the term sepsis and septic shock.
Hmm.
Um, they want to they will narrow the organ dysfunction criteria, which bothers me. And well, there are a lot of things that I suppose I really shouldn't talk about. But it's hard not to talk about it because I'm really disappointed in what they did, and I feel like it will be in the name of being more specific, which is what they clearly stated they were after, was being more specific in the diagnosis of severe sepsis. I think that what is going to wind up happening is that a lot of folks that we currently would diagnose and treat are going to be missed if we move to their new criteria. So we'll just have to see how things play out. And there will be a new definition of septic shock that will involve both tissue oxygenation and cardiovascular stability rather than just cardiovascular stability as we currently call septic shock.
Well, I would think if they raise the threshold that high, that it will increase the mortality or the baseline mortality.
I think,
and then you'll have that select group that you're referring to that you'll have a much more impact on.
right, which I think I get where they're coming from, but I just think what they haven't been, one of my criticisms of the group of authors is that with the exception of one author on the whole consensus conference, none of them has ever tried to move beyond emergency room and academic ICU with quality improvement for sepsis. So they clearly are taking the scientist view, the purist scientific view of I want to be specific about what I'm looking at the expense of sensitivity. And we all know, those of us who are doing this on front lines know that sensitivity is crucial.
Yeah, and the argument that I would offer is that if we raise the threshold that high, and we're only applying the bundles to the more critically ill with severe sepsis, that we're going to delay treatment of the early severe sepsis, and we're going to have more people ending up in that septic shock bucket.
Yeah, I agree completely.
And so if we treat early, well, a lot of those people aren't going to show up.
Right.
We prevented them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Absolutely. In fact, I'm already, in my mind, I'm already preparing the editorial so I can have it written, and the instant they publish this paper, I can send it send it in. Let me see. So that was this. Yeah, Glennis, how are things going in North Kansas City?
Well, we just had a meeting, I believe it was yesterday, introducing what the CMS guidelines are going to be for the outcomes for sepsis and treatment and reassessment. And so, that I'm excited to see that actually happening. There's a team here again.
Isn't it funny? There are so many people that are upset about CMS putting these guidelines in place, and I am just overjoyed.
It just follows along what you've asked for it to be for us to be doing for our patients.
Exactly. It's nice, and it's nice that, if we're going to have to stick our necks out and show people what we're doing, I think it will get us to comply a little better over time. Yep, I'm very pleased with that. Carol, let me ask you. I see that you're muted, but let me ask you this question because you and I have exchanged a number of emails lately. I want to be sure that I have answered all of your emails. Have I done that?
You have done that.
Okay, yeah. Good. All right. Sometimes I worry that I leave them, out there hanging, because I get like 150 emails a day, and if I don't have time to deal with it right now, I sometimes forget, and so just wanted to be sure of that. Carol, Carol sent me last week an OBGYN. Well, actually, it was more of an OB related screening tool. And Carol, that's based on, I think you told me it's based on someone else's tool. Is that right?
That is correct. I can't remember who shared it with our OB supervisor, but it is evidence-based, and they use it at their facility. So we looked at your suggestions and are implementing, changing it to meet what you had suggested, and I think we'll go ahead and implement that OB one.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea because all these places, little specialty areas where you have little twists that kind of throw a wrench at you, it's worthwhile to look through what your criteria need to be or ought to be and how you change that. But I thought it was a really good tool. Once you've doctored it up again, would you send it back, and I'll post it on the website for everybody else who might be interested in having a specific screening tool for obstetrics.
You bet. When we very first started talking about sepsis, actually until you came out and did your presentation, OBs was like, our patients don't get septic. We can't call our OB docs. And it's like, all patients can get septic. There's so much stress with that. So it's just moving along really nice. I hate to hear that it's going to change because we've really pushed hard and we're still having to push. But then if they lessen that criteria, I worry about that.
Mm-hmm. So do I. So do many. I think there are going to be plenty of us who have concern about this. And I'm not exactly sure how we combat it because, frankly, the criteria that we're operating on now were developed by international consensus and published in a consensus conference. It's Yeah, and the problem, I have a couple of problems. When I read the list of authors, I went, these people were handpicked to support a particular approach here. So again, I am composing my editorial because I want it ready to go so it can be published rather quickly when this hits the journal. I just
When do you expect?
when do I expect that? It would not shock me if we see it within the next 3 to 4 months. What they actually the purpose for which I read it was that they sent it to numerous other societies asking for endorsement. And I don't even know what my society, CHEST, is going to do, but I recommended not to endorse it. So we will have to, I don't know what happens. I think that there could be a substantial and important pushback. And like I say, none of these guys are guys who do quality improvement work on the front lines. They're people who are interested in studying sepsis in their academic ICU. So it's a bit tough.
Right. A lot of the people, at least at Hayes, when I very first really started going with sepsis, they really didn't want to start really aggressively treating until they got into more the severe sepsis or the septic shock even.
Yeah.
And so we pushed them to start looking at it early, and now if this changes that, it's just not a good thing.
Right, I know, and I worry that a lot of the people that have been the naysayers out there, and you guys all know who they are, that they'll go, see, look, all along I told you, blah, blah, blah.
Yep, exactly.
It's, it's not an exciting proposition for me. Delisa, how about you guys? I see.
Yeah, well, we had a little kind of decrease in our numbers, and they weren't doing quite as well, so we've had to go back and do more education and get everybody all, I don't know, excited about it again. So our numbers are getting better again. So
good for you. And you know what? That you will find is a perpetual problem that you will have, is that you'll get people interested and then they'll get distracted. And from my standpoint, I don't know how you can get distracted and not pay attention to sepsis, because it is probably the number one cause of death. The way I see it is microbes are mankind's oldest enemy and have been killing us ever since we've been on the planet. And you would think that people would really be tuned in, but it's kind of interesting. People lose their interest and then you have to come back at them again.
Right, yeah.
So thanks for coming back at them.
Yep.
Well, guys, I think that we're kind of early, but I don't have a lot more to say. And frankly, in the past 2 days, I put in 40 hours in 2 days. So I'm sort of, if you can't tell, I'm a little bit on the tired side tonight.
Yeah, that's worth a rest.
So I think since I don't have a lot more to say, and I'm not maybe even firing on all 8 cylinders, maybe I'll go ahead and say let's call this meeting to an end, and I'll get it posted here on the Kansas Sepsis Project YouTube page, and I will send you guys the links for those little educational videos. You can see if they're useful to you. Certainly hospitals in Kansas won't mind that I'm sitting in front of a banner that says University of Kansas Hospital. I don't know, Lee, you may not want to show that in Minneapolis, or St. Paul, I should say, but they might be useful.
Brett James always said, steal anything that's not tied down, and you know, I've been a strong promoter of your work, and that's helped us move along.
Well, good. I mean, these are more like teaser videos. We're having these for our statewide program. We're having day-and-a-half long sessions for people who are interested in coming, and so we're sending them out these sort of as teasers to give a little baseline information, so people have a little background when they come for the full-length training. So everybody can look at them and see if you think they're of use. And I'll get them sent out via email here as soon as we finish.
Great. Thanks, Steve. I'll send you a request for the article.
Yeah, please. Yeah, okay. Do that. And I'll be glad to send it, of course. Okay, guys. Thanks again.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Before we get off, I probably should say, let me get the calendar so we look at when we're meeting next month. I almost forgot that. So this is August. Next month is September. So looks like it will be September 10th. Oh, and this is an interesting thing. So I'll let everybody know this, because I will be going to India from the 1st through the 9th. Whew, I may be tired that day too. I'll be in India the 1st through the 9th, doing a series of sepsis lectures for Indian doctors. Chest asked me to go represent our organization over there and to talk about sepsis. So that's what I'm going to do. So that should be kind of fun. I should have some nice stories next month.
Great.
All right, guys. So September 10th, and that will be a noon meeting. And I will see you all then.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.